So I've made a few more of these homemade twist eyes. I'm just using the annealed galvanized wire I was using before. It's an 18 gauge wire. I'm not too worried about the wire strength. On the earlier videos, I made a video on the pull-out strength of these twist eyes and the screw-in eyes, just to show the difference and the difference you can make just by putting it on an angle in your lure, but mostly to show the strength of the eye. The results were kind of probably not what you expected, but you should check it out. I'll put up a link here so you can go to it. But I had a request or a couple of requests for a test where we're going to be testing these twist eyes that are handmade in a block of wood where they're glued in. So the wood is going to sort of represent the body of the lure. This is a block of cypress. It's got a pretty tight grain, and it's a relatively hard wood. It's not super soft, but it's probably about like a basswood. I installed these by first drilling in an 1/8 inch hole, and then I screwed them in. And I glued them in with two different types of glues, crazy glue and 5-minute epoxy. I've also put them in on an angle, and I tried to make them equivalent so that they would pull with the same level of friction, no matter where they were on this little block. The glue's been setting for probably like 5 days, so that's plenty of time to get the full strength of the glue. So all that's left to do is to get out there, rig this up to the winch scale, and see what we get. Okay, so same arrangement. I'm capturing the actual load with the cell phone, and the little crane scale is hooked up pretty much the same way. I've put a little bit of duct tape so nothing will come flying apart. I had to make a connection to the eyes with some 120-pound braid doubled over. I'm pretty sure it'll hold. There's only 4 to pull, so it should be pretty quick work. First test, far left, crazy glue embedment. Let's give it a shot. Load, let's go. Okay. So, not too dramatic, wasn't expecting a whole lot of drama. We'll zero it. This one is the first of the 5-minute epoxies. So, let's load it up. Ooh, substantially stronger. Okay, so that actually exceeded the strength of the line, so 100 and some odd pounds. So I'm going to have to come up with another configuration to try to yank that out of there. So stand by. Okay, so we're still trying to pull the 5-minute epoxy sample on the left. Okay, let's start loading. Wow, okay, so it did come out, and it took a piece of wood with it. So, early results, definitely a huge difference between crazy glue and 5-minute epoxy. Let's do the other two and see if they are consistent. 5-minute epoxy again. Okay, let's load it up. And again, this is going to be the crazy glue, the last of the crazy glue ones. Now I just need to look at the footage and compile the data. There's only 4 data points, so I'll put it on the dry erase board and we'll take a look and maybe have a little conversation about the significance of this capacity and how that fits in with your fishing system. Okay, so here we are at the dry erase board. That's kind of a schematic of that block of wood. Where is it? That block of wood I used. The first one on the left was glued in with super glue. The next one was 5-minute epoxy, 5-minute epoxy, and then super glue. The first super glue was 49.8 pounds. Here I have the actual twist eyes that I used in this and that got pulled out. Let me show you a close-up. Okay, if you notice, this one right here that's sort of unwound is the one that was super glued in and came out with a much stronger strength. I think when I screwed this in, I hit bottom and I torqued it and it loosened the windings. And I think that sort of pressed it against the walls of the bore and gave it a little more strength. So I think that's a little bit of an outlier. The strength is probably closer to 50 pounds. This one right here is the first 5-minute epoxy pull out, and you can see it yanked out of a chunk of wood. If you'll notice in the video, I actually missed getting the recording of the load, but it was at right about 161, a little higher, and the second one was at 165, the second 5-minute epoxy one. These were an 1.25 inches long from the base of that eye to the end of the actual wire twists. Keep in mind that the longer embedment, the better your strength, your pull-out strength. Now I would have to say that even at 50 pounds on a small lure, a lure for bass, let's say, or even inshore species in salt water, it's probably plenty. So let's talk a little bit about the actual fishing gear as a system, including the lure, and we'll talk about what's enough. Okay, so when I look at something like this, being brainwashed as an engineer, I see a system, and I see a system that can fail. So that's the way engineers look at things. Usually, your line is the weakest part of your whole system. So when you begin to think about how strong that hook eye has to be in your lure, you really need to think about what kind of loading the system is going to take, not just that lure. Because even if you hook into something heavy and unusual, say a turtle or something, you still have an entire system that takes up the slack. So first of all, the line, especially if you're using a shock leader or you're using mono, that's going to take up a lot of the shock load if you're setting a hook on a rock or something. And then the rest of the shock load is going to be taken up by the rod itself. That's your big shock absorber. The drag comes in last. So if all these components are being used correctly and set right, the lure should never fail. The shock absorbers built into the system are going to take any of those big shock loads. The lure itself is going to see minimal loads. And in fact, if you have one of these eyes glued in and you're getting 40 pounds of embedment strength, typically your split rings aren't going to be able to handle more than that load anyway. So really, that kind of embedment strength is more than enough. I would be looking for something around 40 pounds minimum on my lures on embedment strength, on just inshore fishing and freshwater fishing. If you're fishing for the big stuff, you're going to have to go with a through lure sort of harness or an entire, just a direct through wire system. But what I'm seeing here is the fact that you don't have to have a factory made screw eye. And in fact, these hand twisted eyes are more than enough. And of course, the results show that 5-minute epoxy is the way to go. 165 pounds out of 1.25 inch embedment. That's fantastic. In fact, you could probably lower that to 1 inch easily and still get probably more than 100 pounds of holding load. That's much more than you need and should give you some pretty good confidence making your own and gluing them in with 5-minute epoxy. Thank you for watching. I hope this was useful to some of you lure makers. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and hit that like, because the more likes the video gets, the more friendly the YouTube search engine is. I'm hoping to get out and do a little kayak fishing coming up pretty soon, so hopefully I'll be taking out some nice new lures and try to videotape it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.